New Super Mario Bros. Wii is a game that a lot of people hold very dearly to their heart, myself included. This was one of the first Mario games I had ever played, right up there with Super Mario 64. And considering how much of a hold nostalgia has on me for Mario 64, with it being my favorite game of all time, I wanted to see if it held true for this game as well. So here it is, my second video in my series covering all the new Super Mario Bros. Games. And in this video, I'm going to try to answer the question, is New Super Mario Bros. Wii actually good? After the immense success of New Super Mario Bros. For the DS, with its astounding sales of over 30 million copies, making it the second best 2D Mario game ever, right behind the original for the NES, it became clear to Nintendo just how much people love seeing the return to form to the classic side-scrolling 2D Mario formula. And on November 11th, 2009, New Super Mario Bros. Wii was released in North America and Europe. If you're in Japan, you had to wait another month, which kinda makes no sense as back in the day these games usually released in Japan first, but I digress. What was special about this game, other than it being the first 2D Mario game on a home console since the SNES, was its multiplayer. Now up to 4 people could simultaneously play the game at the same time, and it created a whole new way to tackle levels. Whether you wanted to work together with your friends to try to go for 100% completion by collecting all the star coins, or just making the level a living hell by attacking each other, the multiplayer added a lot to the experience, and some of my fondest memories of this game come from this mode. I think at its core, this game was meant to be experienced with other people. You can see it in the level design. These levels are usually a lot more open than, say, the ones in the DS game. When I replayed through this game for this video, I did play through about 90% of it in single player, as I wanted to judge the game from a single player perspective in this video, but for a good bit of World 5, I played it with a friend and was really astonished by how differently I approached this game when playing it with another person. For example, on this one raft level where your main goal is to try to get rid of all the enemies falling onto it so the raft keeps moving, instead of working together to try to get through the level, we just kept constantly throwing shells and bombs at each other and made a level that I usually would find incredibly slow and boring, one that I really enjoyed just because of the stupid shit we were doing. So yeah, as a multiplayer game, this is probably one of the best on the Wii because of the amount of interactivity and different ways to approach the game you can take with other people, and in my opinion still holds up really well to this day. But this game isn't only good as a multiplayer game. Even playing alone, despite its flaws that I will mention, this is still a really solid experience. Starting off with the levels themselves, there's a lot of variety here. Maybe not as much as the DS game, but enough that I would say I prefer the levels in this game over the original Mario Bros. Games on the NES and SNES. One of the things I pointed out when I was talking about the multiplayer was how these levels are very open to accommodate for up to 4 people, and while this can be a detriment in some cases for single player due to areas feeling empty, when it's done right, it allows for a lot of exploration of these areas to find secrets hidden around. The incentive to explore in this game, other than to find 1-ups and power-ups, is the star coins. Making their return from the DS game, this time they feel a lot more useful, with there being a much better word for collecting all of them. In the DS game, you would use the star coins you collected to open up toad houses and very rarely a secret level or two. But in this game, they are used way more effectively. In World 1, you can actually enter Peach's castle, and in there you can use the different star coins you collected to buy hint movies. These videos show you all sorts of things, like ways to collect a lot of lives, how to collect a difficult star coin, locations of secret exits, and I guess Nintendo showing off? I remember my friends and I tried to recreate this once to very little success. But apart from being able to buy hints with them, once you beat the game, you unlock a secret extra world, World 9. In this world, there are 8 levels. You unlock them by collecting all of the star coins in each of the worlds throughout the game. For example, if you collected all of the star coins in World 1, you only unlocked the first level of World 9, and if you wanted to play the other ones, you had to go back and collect all the star coins in those other worlds. This not only promotes replayability of these levels, but it forces the player to better understand the mechanics of the game, as the levels in World 9 are hard. Maybe not Kaizo hard, but for a Mario game, they are decently difficult, especially if you want to collect all the star coins in them, which I mean, at this point, you probably would want to. One thing I think would have been really cool was if there was a harder rematch with the bosses you fought throughout the worlds at the very end of these levels. And speaking of bosses, let's talk about the different boss battles throughout this game. Instead of going for the unique and original boss fight for each world like we saw in the DS game, this game brings back the Koopalings. And I mean, at the time, this was really cool. We hadn't seen these guys since 1991 back in Super Mario World for the SNES, but if I'm being honest, it's really hard to appreciate these guys in this game just because of how much we see them nowadays, with them coming back in both the new Super Mario Bros. Games that came after Wii. The fights themselves are pretty cool, I guess, but I still prefer the ones from DS just because of how different each fight felt. The way you fight them in this game is pretty lame if I'm being honest. You fight them once in the mid tower in a pretty easy fight that introduces you to that Koopaling's power, and once again in the castle at the end of the world with a still easy but a little more difficult battle with them showing off all of their abilities. I think the reason I feel so disappointed in these fights is just because of how cool the Bowser Jr. battles are in this game. After you defeat the Koopalings in their respective world, you collect a key and see a cutscene of Bowser Jr. laughing at Mario before jumping on an airship with Peach and flying off to the next world. But in World 4 and 6, the airship actually leaves Bowser Jr. behind, and you chase after him, eventually making your way onto the airship. Not only is it really cool to have airship levels in this game, as they were my favorite type of level in Super Mario Bros. 3, the fights with Bowser Jr. here are really unique and fun. In the first, you have to use a propeller block to fly up to Bowser Jr. and hit him in the head while avoiding his fireballs. This fight can be pretty challenging and is such a nice break from just dodging the Koopaling's shells. The World 6 one is probably my personal favorite though. This time, you actually get to use the clown copter thing and have to shake the Wii remote to try to hit Bowser Jr. into the electric lasers. This one may not be that difficult, but it's just fun to me, and just like the other ones, it's such a nice break from the boring Koopaling battles that can just be beaten by using a fire flower or some other power-up. Which leads me to my next topic. Power-ups. These are a staple of 2D Mario games, with a lot of them not only bringing back old power-ups, but introducing completely new ones. And in New Super Mario Bros. Wii's case, this is no different. Well, I guess a little different, as some power-ups from the DS game didn't return, like the Blue Shell and Mega Mushroom. But I mean, the Blue Shell is basically brought back in a completely different form, that being the Penguin Suit. They both have pretty much the same abilities, except the Penguin Suit lets you shoot fireballs. The Mega Mushroom, however, wasn't brought back because it wouldn't really work in multiplayer. And as much of a shame as it is to not see it, I guess it makes sense. The game has a total of 7 power-ups, these being the Mushroom, Fire Flower, Propeller Suit, Ice Flower, Penguin Suit, Mini Mushroom, and the Star. A cool thing about the power-ups in this game is being able to collect them from Toad Houses and being able to use them right before a level. You could also do this in Super Mario Bros. 3, but with a limited amount of slots to hold them in, while in Wii you can hold 99 of each. The Toad Houses in this game are also really fun as well. Personally, I enjoy them way more than the ones in the Wii U game, and having the ability to choose a power-up right before a level adds a lot of strategy. Like, for example, you could be struggling quite a bit on a certain level that only offers fire flowers and the question mark blocks, but since you're able to hold these items in the overworld, you could select a propeller mushroom to make navigating or finding secrets much easier. This is incredibly useful in more difficult World 9 levels, and I'm so glad the option to do this is here. The power-ups themselves are really good as well. Obviously, we have the iconic Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Star, which I don't have much to say about since they are literally just staples of the series and very self-explanatory, but for the others I do. Starting off with the Propeller Mushroom, this power-up is probably my personal favorite of just any 2D Mario power-up because of its incredibly simple but incredibly useful nature. It offers just straight to the point verticality, no charging up a P meter by running or anything like that. You just shake the Wii remote and you're done. It's very useful for getting into high places obviously, but also for avoiding enemies and obstacles. The Ice Flower is also a really cool alternative to the Fire Flower. Not only can you pick up and throw the frozen enemies to hit others, if you freeze an enemy in the water, you can use it as a platform to make traversing the water easier. The Penguin Suit reintroduces the idea of the Blue Shell power-up, but in a more fun way in my opinion. I love sliding around as a penguin and not being forced into sliding once you run for long enough like the Blue Shell did. A lot of people say the Penguin Suit's ability to shoot ice makes the Ice Flower obsolete, but it doesn't really at all. The Penguin Suit is way more rare to find, and you only start to get it once you're in the third world. And finally, the Mini Mushroom is back, and just as fun to use as it was in the DS game. With it, you can find hidden areas and go through small pipes, but personally, I find the Mini Mushroom really fun to use to just add a challenge to certain levels in the game. When I was younger, I used to love replaying some of my favorite levels using this power-up to see if I can complete them in miniature form. Would be cool if Mini Mario changed up some of the music too. Music. Probably the most iconic part of any Mario game is the music that plays throughout the adventure. Whether it's that iconic main theme from the original Super Mario Bros. To the orchestral masterpiece that is Gusty Garden Galaxy, music in these games is what's going to stay with you most after playing them. Just listening to a specific song can bring back lots of memories to someone, and that's why it's important for a Mario game, hell, any game, to have a good OST. And New Super Mario Bros. Wii doesn't just have a good OST, it has an incredible one. This is one of those Nintendo games where there is not a moment of silence, and some of this music does such a good job that a lot of the time you don't even notice it's there. The music does such an amazing job at creating an atmosphere that playing the game without music makes the silence so deafening. Even the little things like the bars in some of the tracks add so much, or the bongos that get added when you're riding Yoshi, it's just so well done. Each of the different worlds in this game are captured perfectly in the music as well. World 1 feels so simple and happy, World 2 feels like a barren desert, World 3 feels like a snowy wonderland, World 4 feels like a tropical getaway. I could go on and on about the music of this game, but I'm really no music theorist, so I'm just going to move on to the cannons you can access throughout the game. Cannons are pretty much the warp zones of this game. You unlock them by finding secret exits in levels, and they allow you to skip huge portions of the game. For example, in World 1, there's a cannon that lets you skip all the way to World 5, and then in World 5, one that lets you skip all the way to the final world, World 8. The cannons make really fun speedruns of this game, and not even just at a competitive level, just casually seeing how fast you can get through all the levels using the skips and coming up with faster ways to beat certain levels. I personally have fond memories of constantly dying in World 5 trying to get to the next cannon, and then doing it, only to find myself dying even more in World 8. Great memories of, dying. And while on the topic of different worlds, I feel like the worlds in this game feel more connected than they do in the Wii U game, the game where they are literally all interconnected. Now, don't get me wrong, some of these don't make much sense, like arriving in the ice world after running out of the desert, but some of these I thought were really cool, like how once you beat World 4, you see Mario running into a forest, only to end up in a deeper, vaster forest, and then from that forest, end up in the mountains, and then from the mountains, head up to the clouds. I think this game does this much better than the Wii U game because it's implied there's actual distance between these areas, rather than the Wii U game where you just kind of walk 2 steps and you're in the desert now, and it's pretty jarring. Just as jarring as me talking about the distance between the worlds in these games to talking about the final Bowser battle. Yeah, somehow throughout this entire video, I've mentioned Bowser a total of 0 times. The reason for this is that Bowser is literally only seen in the last level, and that is it. And I guess that makes the confrontation with him that much cooler. The castle itself leading up to Bowser isn't anything to write home about. I think the sinking lava section is cool, but I mean the castle isn't nearly as good as the one from DS, which to this day I think is the coolest 2D Mario level. The Bowser fight, however, is something to write home about. That's why I'm writing this right now. Well, I guess I'm reading it, but that's besides the point. The room right before you enter the fight is just so cool. The music is so ominous and ambient, not pushing you forward at all. It's kind of like a rest area to prepare you for your first and final confrontation with Bowser. Even when you enter the door, you still hear that ominous music, and only once you start moving do you see Bowser's fireballs coming right at you, only to lead you into the legendary finale of this game. The amazing, the epic, the cinematic fight ripped straight out of the NES game. Nah, I'm only kidding. I would be complaining about this if this was the only part of the fight, but it's not. I think it's really cool that this is the beginning, especially with the cage that seems to have Peach inside. Obviously this part is extremely easy. You run under Bowser and hit the switch. Even with the sound of him hitting the ground and the start of the Peach theme really can make somebody sit there and go, that's it? Before about 5 seconds later when Bowser jumps back up, taking up about 25% of the screen with his enormous size. The final battle is just so cool to me. Instead of trying to attack Bowser, this time Mario's just running for his life, only being able to make progress when Bowser shoots a fireball at him. The music of this fight is just so good as well. It's intense, but not too intense for a Mario game. The vocals also just lend to how powerful Bowser seems in this form. I have nothing really to complain about in this fight? Chase sequence? It's just so original and unique, and it's not long or tedious either. It ends at the perfect time. It's an incredible finale to the game. Hitting that switch at the end and seeing Bowser fall is so satisfying. Way better than the fight from the DS game. Just a great ending to a great game. New Super Mario Bros. Wii is not a perfect game. It has many flaws, but at its core is a great time. Whether you're playing this game alone or with friends, there's a lot of fun to be had. Trying to collect all the star coins and getting stuck on that specific star coin you've been looking for hours, only to finally cave in and look it up to see GameXplain tell you it's in a fucking invisible alcove, or trying to beat a difficult level with your friends, only for that one asshole to keep killing you with a shell. That's me, by the way. I'm that asshole. This is a really special game. It has that Nintendo charm that you don't see that much these days. You can tell there was a lot of love put into it. Going into this video, I was scared that this game wouldn't live up to the memories I had with it. But to my surprise, I ended up having a lot more appreciation for it because of this video. And to finally answer the question I posed in the title of this video, is New Super Mario Bros. Wii good? Yeah, maybe a little more than good.